I'm going to go ahead and lower the volume of the game. And let's go ahead and go into the review. And, oh, thank you, Dragonfly and Lucian Queen. And if anyone is still here, we finally made it all the way through the game. And although the ending is a little ambiguous, but fortunately I have a heart of stone, so I'm not crying, but I'm certainly sad. Like reading the lines though, it's a lot harder than actually. Like, I'm not in tears, but when I was reading the lines, I felt it, so it was a lot harder to like keep myself together. But I think I'm okay. Anyway, so yeah. Yeah, and what's up? So, okay, so this playthrough is now over, so we'll just go ahead and go into the review, since, like, it's still pretty fresh in my mind. I've already talked about this at length because of how long the game is, but, I'll just go through it really fast, pretty fast. It's mostly stuff I've already touched on before. So, with reviews, generally, like, this is my favorite part of the playthrough, where I get to talk about the game really quickly. Usually I divide it into story, graphics, sound, and gameplay. So I'll start off with story, and I do, like, of course, when I review games, I try to keep in context when they were released. This one was 2011, I believe. Hold on, I have the box. I gotta remember. I know we'll be saying goodbye to this century soon enough. I have the box here, as you can see. Ooh, I'm so baller. But in seriousness, like, I've gotten it from... I got it a long time ago. Yeah, 2011. I was right. Cool. So, I do have to keep in mind that this game was made in 2011. The graphics were pretty good already by that point. So, let's go ahead, before I get into the other aspects, I'll just talk about the story. You know, I came in the game with, like, pretty low expectations. This game has kind of a bad reputation in the Chinese internet for various reasons. One, it was following an entry of the game that was very, very good, Legend of Sword and Fairy 4. And so I guess expectations were sky high for every part of it. But, you know, I actually don't... Like, I thought the story would be a lot worse than I thought. I know it's really weird for me to be making comparisons to its previous entries, but I actually still thought it was pretty good. Like, I think in terms of story, like, there's definitely still the stuff that is like the emotional driver for this series. There's a lot of sacrifice, a lot of like there's a lot of like love, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of making difficult decisions, like heart-wrenching stuff that's really typical for this series in particular. I think and I do like the fact that technically there's not too much, even in the plot itself. Like, it was a little weird where we didn't have a clear villain, and that was kind of interesting. Yeah, no, it wasn't sad at all. I did not feel pain at all. No, but in seriousness, like, one thing that's interesting about this game is that there isn't really, like, a clear villain until much, much later in the game, which is kind of a difference from the previous games. Like, I think maybe only Legend of Sword and Fairy 2 might be a little bit, like, where the main villain is not... But you meet the main villain very, very early, where in this game it was sort of like... It all kind of came together near the end. But for a long time, there wasn't a clear villain. You just had very clear goals. I think in terms of distractions, there was only, like, this series is also typical of, like, oh, we always have some other, like, silly thing that takes away, like, your attention from the main plot for a bit. And there were some, like, Legend of Sword and Fairy 1 definitely did that, and then, like, a lot of the entries in the series do that too, where they have a little line that's, like, part of the main quest, but you have to do it. I think that was only once, which is like the bamboo forest in like the forest village, and that was a nice diversion. But I mean, like, it's not very long, and it's still a nice story. Like, I wouldn't say that it's my favorite of the main side quests, but I'm actually noticed that there's a lot more, like, there's not too much of that, and I actually kind of was happy that we didn't get distracted off, and I'm like, oh my goodness, we're doing something completely unrelated. And like that happened a lot in, I think 3 and 3.5 were pretty notorious for doing that too. And I definitely felt like you could feel the chemistry of the group. I do think that they did a really good job of making us feel like we were with a set of 4 people that really liked being together with each other. And of course you can feel they decided to focus more on like incidentally, it's kind of interesting where they have 2 main couples and there's no choices unlike previous game. I don't know if that's a disadvantage or an advantage for the game. For me, I feel like it allows them to focus on the couples that are determined, and I'm actually A-okay with that, because honestly I don't really care too much about choices. But I know that maybe some players were disappointed. Maybe that's why some people are like, oh, I wanted to try pairing with someone else, but I guess that didn't happen. I think one of the weaknesses of the story is that there are certain there's not too much of them, but there's a couple of things where they didn't explain things very well. I think the whole that incident with the sword, that was a little weird with the Huangfu family, and it's kind of like out of nowhere, and you're just like, I don't know what's going on. And apparently Trico will probably explain that better from what I've heard, but I don't. It's kind of lame that they did that. And there's just some, it's just small things. Yeah, the Shali sword was so random. That whole part was completely unnecessary. Honestly, they could have... I mean, they had to do it in this game, but it was I don't understand with Chun-Li sword. That was one of the other things that distracted. I think that's the only major, what? Because the rest... And I think the only thing I would say that... Now that I think about it, is that if you hadn't played previous games in the series and you tried... If this is your first one, you might be a little confused about, how some of the things... Why they're so significant. But I don't know if I should fault the game for that, because it's clearly number 5 in the series, so I don't know if the expectation is that you have definitely played some of the previous games. I feel like if you want to really... you could probably still enjoy this game, but I think you might be a little more lost if you had not played Legend of Sword and Fairy 1, at least. You need 1, and 2 would probably be a good idea, too. Actually, I don't know. Or you could just just story fact that one. You don't even need to play 2. I'm sad to say. 2 is okay. A lot of good stuff. But anyway, we won't talk about 2 because I've already reviewed that before. But overall, I'm still really I just start backwards. It does feel like I do like the fact that the game does have a few nods to 1 a lot for 1 and some for 2. And I do like that. As someone has been following the series. So that's really, really cool. The little nods. They could... What am I thinking? Yeah, I mean, they also have the synopsis, which is very, very helpful. Thank you, game. That's a little bit more gameplay, but yeah. But I do think, for the most part, the progression of events made a lot of sense. I didn't notice anything really oh, this makes completely no sense. Or why don't you just that's the worst, when you're characters, why aren't you doing something? I don't think I can think of any part of that, so I'm actually pretty impressed. So I'm okay, so far it's nothing weird. Oh, that one is a little bit hard to say. There is the deaths, the character deaths early on in the game are have no impact. I mean, I almost don't know if I mind that too much. I'm okay with that because they're not... that's information I don't need for this story in particular. It will probably be more relevant in the next game, prequel, which is 5 prequel. And I think that maybe it would be bad if you had already known the characters early on, but in this case it's the scenes are kind of quick, so you're just oh, that's sad, but yeah, you don't feel anything. And I'm actually not sure if I think that's a bad thing for the most part, because they're not like Doing is not close to any character in particular, so you're not supposed to feel anything. And I guess the only thing is that they could have shown more of Long Yo's brother. It is kind of sad that they didn't do that. I don't think it's enough to make the story bad, but I don't know. But it is just like, it just irks me, but, you know, I don't think, yeah, for the most part, yeah, I don't really have that much. I was expecting a lot worse, but I'm like, okay, in the story department, it's still pretty okay. Yeah, the DLC should have been voiced. I don't know why. That's a separate issue altogether, not related to the story, but the DLC is not voiced. That's unfortunate. Anyway, I think for the story, yeah, that DLC is really, really good. I actually do like that it gave us a little bit more feelsy to add on to the ending, which was already feelsy. So, I don't know what to say. I mean, I think it's interesting they made it a little bit ambiguous. I mean, reasonably, I guess it's yeah, she's not coming back, so he would just have to live with just the memory of her, and yeah. You just have to wait until the next rebirth cycle. I don't know what else to say. And that's just life, man. Sometimes it just happens. Oh, game. Anyway, I think that's it for story. I can't think of anything else. That's a long time. Any scenes in particular in the game that I liked? The humor scenes are really fun. I actually really enjoyed those. I mean, I think that DLC 1 scene is actually probably among my favorite. I'm like, wow, that's a lot of emotional impact. I just kind of like when the party's like messing around. Like, those are always really fun. Because, like, I really enjoy that we're not like... Oh, that princess scene was amazing. That was hilarious. Thank you for reminding me. That is actually one of my favorite parts, too. I was just... I was on the floor for that one. And you guys could see it on the stream, but I was just like, oh my gosh. Oh gosh, that BL part was amazing. That was hilarious. The Rakshasa princess. Oh gosh. That was like... That's epic. That, like, makes the game. Like, that's just, like, one of my favorites. I think there is a lot... There's one thing... You know, the game's not actually that full... Like, there's some jargon, but it's not that often, which is actually surprises me. I think in a lot of... in some of the games in this series, some games got laden really hard with jargon and, like, stuff that's really not that relevant. If you think about it with the story, and it's just flavor text, and it's burdensome to translate as well, and it's burdensome to read too, because you're like, oh my gosh, get on with it. I don't care about how this works. Just tell me the shortest. But this game is pretty nice about not doing that. I'm actually really impressed that it does not have that much jargon. There's a lot of poetry though, so you will need to know some stuff. Even if you don't know it, but you can kind of like. At this level of Chinese, you could probably, if I had not been translated, I could actually focus and read it. I probably would have like kind of understand what the poem's about. There's just some key words in poetry that you have to know, and I really need to study more poetry. But because most of the stuff I read is mostly prose, so it's like I don't use this in my common language or my media for that matter. Anyway. Yeah, there's a lot of really great scenes. I like the scenes of the party hanging out together. It's always really nice. You just get, like, that's how it's supposed to feel. A party should feel cohesive. So, there's not too many party members, and they're like, it's not like, oh, there's like an awkward love triangle. And actually, I'm actually, like, pleasantly, like, you know what? It's just nice to have a bunch of 4 friends together, and it's simple, and it works really well. They all play off really well with each other, and so you're not like, oh, character 1 never interacts with character 4, so I don't know how they feel about it. And that's not true, because like Yunfan interacts with all 3 of his friends, and they all interact with each other, so that's really nice. I actually really enjoyed it. Oh yeah, no kidding. I'm actually kind of glad. Sometimes that got kind of like in previous games we had to deal with always a love triangle. Like that last one was Meng Li and Ling Shan, and the previous one was with the one before that was Peng Xu and why am I forgetting her name now? Oh goodness, it's been so long that I've forgotten her name. Anyway, I'm getting off topic here. And the first is infamous for 3 ladies. So anyway, it's kind of nice. We could focus less on like love fighting and more about like camaraderie, and that's really really cool. Like there was no uncertainty about who's with who, and that's good. That means you can just focus on the relationship rather than focusing on whether who is he gonna pick this time or whatever, which gets kind of old after a while. So good job, game. So yeah, I don't know why people don't like the story. I mean maybe the irksome parts do suck, but for the most part, I don't really have a problem with it. I was not expecting it to be of this quality, actually. So good for them. Surprised me after the Chinese internet scared me. Okay, so enough about I think that's all I have to talk about for the story. For the graphics, I think that the artistry is there. Yeah, no, it wasn't as bad as people made it seem to be, I agree. I think for graphics, I'm a little bit more disappointed. I've already mentioned this multiple times, but this is 2011. And they're using Renderware, which is Criterion's engine. And I'll be really honest, like, I can tell, like, the concept art must have been amazing. Like, China, they know how to design locales. Like, they're really, really nice if you just base it on the pure artistic point of view. But the engine cannot handle it well, so it's not as nice as it should be. Like, I guess at this time, it was already about 5 years into the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360's lifetime, so they're definitely pushing things harder by this point in time, and this is just not to the level of where it should be. So I think, like, from a gameplay perspective, like from a clarity of seeing how paths go, it's pretty all right, but like it just feels dated, and it's not up to par with even some of the indie games I've seen at that point in time, 2011. So it's unfortunate that the game is not given the graphical engine it needs to be, and so it just looks dated and looks like compared to its contemporaries. Because if I showed you guys this, if you might think it was like 2006, 2007, and that's not good. A nostalgic look. I think it was a matter of budget and also a lack of technical expertise. I mean, at this time, Chinese games had a very difficult time back then, like 7 years ago, of like catching up to what the the advances that were made in Europe and North America and Japan, which are like where a lot of game development happens. And at this time, 2011, like, this game doesn't even, like, we even had Final Fantasy 13 and already at this point, and it was just like, I have to say, it doesn't look as good as, like, its story is probably better. It's better than Final Fantasy 13's. Ooh, I'm sorry, I had to drop that bombshell. But graphically, Final Fantasy 13 is definitely more advanced. Yeah, I know. I think, like, sorry, the graphics of FF13 might be better, but the story's better in this game. Ooh, I just burned some fans there. But in seriousness, Yeah, it definitely needed better. They needed a better engine, and I don't think they're given the budget to do it. I think Softstar is pretty cheap. So, unfortunately, if you get what you pay for, you don't give them enough time to make it, then you end up with this. And so, I think, for the most part, at least, everything's clear. I didn't really have too much difficulty. There's still the issue sometimes of, like, not being able to figure out where to go, where you can walk on. The maps did help alleviate that a little bit more, so I'm actually pretty okay with that. And I have to say that I will bring up the graphical glitching in this game. It's actually kind of out of control on newer computers. I do not know why on this computer it's been doing that. And I checked my drivers and I tried to alleviate it, but there's nothing I could do. I tried a bunch of things already, and I guess it just can't handle new computers. Because this computer is like the equivalent of a 2018, 2017 desktop, and it can easily run this at full settings, but the graphical glitching was just out of control. And it's unfortunate, too. Because, like, it actually was pulling away from the experience, and that's not good. So, yeah, basically, good artistry. I'll make a little quick thing about the character designs. I honestly think they're not great, but okay, Yudo's is fine. Yunfan is fine. Shaman, oh goodness, what were they thinking? I still can't get over it. I like her as a character, but her outfit sucks. And in this game, you don't get to change costumes, so you screw. You get idol outfit all. And it makes no sense within the story either, so it's just like, why? Why would you do that? Get better outfits. This is definitely not one of the better games in the series for this kind of character designs. I think the next game... Okay, the next game has better ones, from what I've seen already. And the game after is also pretty decent too, so it only goes up from here, I think. I hope. I have to look through those designs again. Because I'm always excited for Legend of Sword and Fairy stuff. Or or just martial arts warrior stuff. It's hit or miss. I mean, you can definitely see which ones were more fan servicey than others. Anyway, that's a separate topic. But yeah, the designs are okay. The towns are okay. The NPCs are very unexceptional. And frankly, they don't look very good either. So that's kind of disappointing. And normally they should at least look presentable, but they don't look They don't look that great either. And I'm kind of disappointed too. The enemies look okay. I think that just sums up everything. It's alright. It's not pushing the boundaries. And it might be below average. And that's not good. But hopefully, I think China's development has been catching up. And there's definitely some other companies that are definitely pushing the envelope for graphics, so it only goes up from here, and hopefully going forward, game development in China will definitely be better for sure. Okay, well, I've harped on about graphics, so let's talk about sound now. So with sound, there's what is there to say? The soundtrack's pretty good. I mean, we're listening to a song right now, right? The soundtrack's pretty nice. I think... Oh, the ending song is really, really nice, too. Like, I was like, oh, jeez. So emotional. I mean, oftentimes they are, but, like, the music's pretty nice. I have to admit that I'm not remembering individual tracks. I just never thought that I'm like, man, I hate this track. It's so... The ones that stand out for me are, like... The scary dungeon theme is actually really, like, spooky. I actually kind of like it because it's so eerie. It just perfectly encapsulates how you're supposed to feel in the dungeon. The battle music's also really fun, too. Like, pretty good, actually. Like, I don't think... Like, I will say that this is... Like, this... Although these... I don't think these are my... This is my favorite game soundtrack I played on this stream, but it's definitely, like... It's certainly better than some other ones I played. Oh, man. We have played all manner of things here. So I would say that it's suitable for the atmosphere. I haven't heard anything that was really jarring that I'm like, oh, I don't understand this. Why this is here? So good job. I would definitely listen, give the OST another listen again, just to remember the moments. The voice acting quality is good. I did not have any problems with it at all, because I'm like, they're pros, so I can tell. And so I hope you guys did get that feeling too. I know it was in a language that, I mean, you guys are like, some of our viewers here are used to hearing foreign audio. We've already heard Japanese audio, Swahili audio, Czech audio, so Chinese audio should not be beyond your wheelhouse. So I guess you could at least you got to hear Chinese audio, and the voice actors did a really good job. I was like, perfect. I don't have any problems with this. They do a really good job. So oftentimes I'm like, oh, I have to imitate this? Oh, crap. So I have no problem there. I do think it's disappointing that the DLC does not have any voice acting, especially since it has some important scenes in there. I don't know why they cheapened out on that, so that's kind of weird. There were also some weird bugs with dialogue being on the wrong box. That happened a couple of times, and that's kind of a bummer, because it kind of throws you for a loop. You're like, what? That's not what they're saying. But I think, like, in terms of the quality of voice acting, it's great. Yeah, dialogue spoilers. I mean, it's only one ahead, but it's still like, what? That doesn't make sense. You'll actually hear some of these actors and actresses in Chinese animation, because the Chinese voice acting industry is still very small right now. I mean, it is a hope that eventually it will become bigger, but until then, it's still going to be... It'll be very much a small community until maybe animation and games become more popular. And hopefully now that this game series, Legend of Sword and Fairy, and... Fairy 6 will be since that's the first to be released in the West, it will hopefully pave the way for more voice actors and actresses to join in. I really do enjoy listening to the actors and actresses, so... There's anything else I wanted to say about the sound, other than the fact that I like the music. The sound effects are pretty cool. One weird thing is that the battle audio is notably missing. There's no battle audio practically, except for one technique that Yunfan has. I don't know why they chose to do it this way, because it just kind of makes... I feel like I liked the previous games where they had at least some sounds when you hit things, so you only can hear the sounds, but you cannot hear the grunts. The grunts added a little more impact, and especially for the characters, and you don't hear it at all, which is very, very sad. So I don't know why they cheapened out on this game, and it just contributes to the game feeling more cheap than it should, feeling cheaper than it should. And like, that's just the story of this game, is like, it feels cheap at certain parts. The sound effects are fine. I don't have any problem with it. I mean, they sound appropriate. I think that's just most important. I mean, there were some weird monsters with weird grunts in previous games, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it at all, right? No one this universe feels pain. It's true. And like and even in battle, the audio would have helped, because there's some battle quotes in the middle of battle, and that would have been nice if they voiced it like in certain games, like the Tales of series, which they do a pretty good job, where they talk to you. So, yeah, some missed opportunities, but for the most part, it's pretty okay. Yeah, and the voice actors are also in Chinese dramas, a lot of them. That's the one that makes money, too. So, now we're gonna get to the final part, gameplay. This one's an interesting one, because like, there's some parts that are really good, and then there's some parts that are really bad. So let's address the first things that are bad first. There is one part in the game where you literally can checkmate yourself. Oh boy. It's called, I say checkmate because it is, I'm a seasoned, I consider myself a very well, player that is very well versed in RPGs at this point. Like, I understand generally how they work, so as you can see, I have a lot of saves on me to ensure I didn't have any problems. There is one point in the game that they still let you save, and you can literally be stuck there forever, and you will never, because you are placed in the point where it is impossible to level. And so you will never beat the boss. If you cannot beat the boss, you will never pass that point. And that's very, very bad. Like, that in itself is game breaking, and it should not have been done that way. There should have been a failsafe against it, at the very least. Like, basically, I'm talking about the seven saints, the seven palaces challenge, and it's just kind of bad. That's probably the one biggest gameplay problem in the whole game. It's just the fact that you can checkmate yourself. If you had not, because if you did not do this strategy of spreading out your saves, like, the game kind of encourages you to do so. Unfortunately, if the auto-saved you in a situation where you're not going to escape, then you're dead. So that should not have happened. The other thing is that, unlike many other RPGs in other countries, this game also has it so that you cannot do the post-game. You're literally stuck in a situation where you can't explore anywhere, so you can only grind in the final dungeon, and that's it. You're stuck forever. I guess the game does give you ample warning. I don't know how I feel about that. I guess it's very much like some old school games. I do wish that you could escape the final dungeon and do more, but I suppose for the narrative, they didn't allow you to do that. Also annoying is that right before you go into the final dungeon, your character is unable to fly anymore. So you cannot do the post-game if you didn't know it was already going to happen. And that's kind of lame. Because you should give because the player cannot predict that Yunfan, the character, will no longer be able to fly. And so that's just really poor planning. Because that story point doesn't tell you that you're going to... Obviously, it's not going to tell you that you're going to lose Yunfan's ability for a while. And that means you can't fly anywhere. So you had unfinished business elsewhere, you were screwed. So that's kind of lame. I don't think that was good, well designed. So there's just these weird, questionable gameplay decisions. For the most part, if you keep yourself leveled, you'll be fine. Mooks get pretty easy, but like mooks as in like the common monsters are not too difficult. Some of them are harder than others, but with proper levels, eventually you'll be able to overcome them. And there's a point where they're really not that challenging. But the bosses, on the other hand, are insanely hard. And some of them are just like cruel, really cruel. Like they'll get to attack you twice with a very powerful attack. So if you don't... Like, the only thing is like there's a disconnect. Like, I don't think the game is so hard that's impossible. And like grinding is not... It's long, but not so long that it's like unbearable. Okay, it's pushing it for me personally, but it's not completely unbearable. But I have a problem when the monsters are really easy, and then the boss is really hard. There's just no balance. A boss should be a test of your abilities, and should be I would say the monsters and the boss should be a bit closer in terms of difficulty, and I don't think that's the case here, so I feel like it's just a game full of gameplay imbalance. And like for the most part, they do try to help you out with getting the levels and giving you like mastery, and like the system's much more simplified than the previous one was. I didn't like that one. That is Sword of Fairy 4 was kind of complicated. I think the battle system probably could have used like some more visibility as well. Sometimes I couldn't tell like if a move would allow me to act again. So that happened a couple of times where like, oh, Shaman used an item. Oh, she can act again. That's great. I didn't know she could do that. And it's not really clear on the line, I feel. I actually think that this would have benefited mostly from Final Fantasy X's order system. Because essentially this is an order system. Unlike the Grandia system of previous games, the game works on like you do certain turns and it changes your order. So if it had been visible like you would see in Trails or Final Fantasy X, that would actually have been really good, so you could actually strategize and try to make it so your character, you can change the order dynamically. It's not very well expressed in the battlefield, and that's kind of unfortunate, because that would actually have made the game a lot more interesting in terms of strategizing. Because this game, you could actually definitely... I do like the fact that for the bosses, you want to strategize as much as possible. Because sometimes it's actually a really fun challenge. Other times it's a little bit unfair, and it's just like, oh man. Especially the bosses that healed. Oh no. And the one you had to kill both of them at the same time, that was just terrible. Those are just terrible. So there's just some questionably designed bosses and some good ones. And the game's just buggy. I don't know. It's just it could just be my computer configuration, but it's just been buggy for me this whole time. It has not let up, and it's really, really annoying. And I guess that's what you get for using an old engine. So I don't know if this is very engine dependent. That's the problem with PC. You just can't really like know for sure. Sorry, I had to make sure to drink. So like, yeah, it's just imbalance. The effects are nice. I do like the fact that you can skip all the battle animations. I wish it was more clear how much damage you did. If it listed on a number on the screen after you skip the animation, that would be better. They do not do that. That's something that is not... Disgaea does a really good job of showing so that you can skip all the animations. But skipping the animations is a huge godsend, so your battles don't take 10,000 years to finish. So good job on you, game. You're almost there. One thing that bothered me too is UI equipment. Equipment is cumbersome to do. You wish if there was a switch seals button, that would be so much better. Oh, I'm almost there. Don't worry. I'm getting to that. The game overall. I'm just calling out all the things I noticed. The UI of the game is really... Ugh. Like, the buying things is the worst thing ever. Sorry, that sounds really exaggerated. But purchasing items is nigh impossible because you don't know which equipment belongs to who. So you're literally buying stuff first in the hopes that your characters can wear them. And if you bought duplicates, well, you're out of luck, kiddo. Shopping is a horrible experience. It was one of the worst RPG shopping experiences I've ever seen. You know you've done something wrong when even Final Fantasy 1, a game from 1989, has a better shopping system than you do. Like, think about that, guys. In 1989, they show the characters on the screen. It showed which equipment that the character could use. And it was simple. And it's just like, how did they forget to put something so important? So you don't know what equipment that people can wear in the shopping screen. So you have to buy the stuff, go all the way back to the menu, hope you bought the right stuff. Did you buy the right stuff? Yes, you did. Great. You did buy the wrong stuff? Well, I guess you gotta sell it, or you just wasted your money. And it was like, why would you do that? Like, what? Like, how did they forget such important piece of information? And, like, it's cumbersome because I hated buying equipment. It was actually one of the worst things I dreaded when I played this game. And the other thing I dreaded was just changing seals over and over again. I hated that. Because you can't switch all 3 seals. You have to go one by one, remove them, and one by one put them back by memory. And it was like not fun at all. I hated it. And it made me not want to like mess with the seals so much. So I was just like, okay, you know what? I don't care. We'll just keep the seals the way they are. I'm too lazy to look through. And there was just so many small things they could have changed. Like the equipment. Show which character belongs to it. How much it improves them. Done. Equip it in the screen. Any modern games know how to do that. How did you lose to a 1989 game? That's not possible. For seals, if they had a quick transfer, that would have been so much better. Then you don't have to do this cumbersome, like pick them, de-equip them, and re-equip them. That was terrible. Terrible. Like, I hated that. And that's almost game-breakingly bad, but it's just a huge inconvenience to the players. So, honestly, they deserve all the flack for that as well. Really quickly, I appreciated the maps. Thank you for bringing maps to the game. I don't appreciate as much as, like, I wish the game would let you remember where you've traveled. So that way you know what you have not explored. What I would have preferred is that there was like we call it a fog of war, where there's black all over the map. And it shows a lighted area, which is the areas you have seen. And what I would have preferred is that they would have fog of war, and then if you got the map, you got to see all of it. That would have been so much better. And they did not do that. So there were a couple of dungeons where you're wondering and you don't know. You're hoping you can find that map and you don't. So you get lost and it's really, really bad. For the most part, the dungeon design's not that complicated though. So this issue did pop up so much. Dungeon length is varying. Some of them are longer than others. But at least you have save anywhere. So it's not... You're not really threatened. I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain where... Unlike some games where you have the tension, like some older games or even some new games where you had the... Fog of War is what we call it. In this game, this is one of the... They brought back Save Anywhere, which is I'm thankful for that. It saved our lives quite a few times. So that's a good innovation. It also made it so that dungeons, even though they're intimidating, at least you can save... after every battle, so if you mess up, you can always reset. Thank you for that. And it's good because that allows you to explore the dungeons and you can find your way. It may be a little bit overwhelming, yeah. They should have probably had a fog of war to make your life easier. So that would have been preferable. Anything else I can think of? The elemental mastery system is fine. It doesn't take too long to master it, honestly. So, and with some equipment, you can actually make it go even faster than that. So that's pretty neat. Anything else to say about it? Wow, I have a lot to say about gameplay. I'm sorry, guys. I'm just noticing all these things now. Combo system's interesting. I actually think that's one of the more interesting aspects of the game. Forcing it to be a mini game each time is a little bit like... I'm actually not sure if I think that's bad or good. It does make it so I'm awake, so that's good. I mean, some of the previous games were monotonous, like mash the same attack button. That was kind of boring. I do like the combo attacks, so it makes bosses very unique, because you almost always just want to use combos during bosses. It's overkill for most regular enemies, so I never used it. And I was like, it's always so fun to try to hit those combos. But they really could have, like... I don't think they did a really great job of explaining the first time. There's a lot of things, like, they explain the giant graphic that's huge with an info dump, rather than just demonstrating to you in the menu, which would have been better. So I'm gonna call it on that. The tutorial is not that great. It's just really like... Here, this is the laziest tutorial way possible. We will give you a big graphic that shows you everything. And it's clear, sorta, but it just takes a while to read through. That, my friends, is why we have contextual tutorials, is what we call them. Basically, tutorials in the menu, and you just follow the menu, and it would be so much easier. Who would have thought? Anything else I want to say? The magic system is pretty easy to understand, and the cheese system is pretty easy to understand too. So I don't have a problem with that. They're also very generous on gold and items, so I don't have a problem with that either. Amazing. I used up my money near the end, but that was because I was right in front of the final boss. Anything else? Yeah, no, I don't think... I think I covered pretty much everything in it. I don't think there's anything else I can say about that I haven't covered. So I covered a lot of faults. I feel really bad because the game does do some stuff well, but there's a lot of stuff that doesn't do well. Alright, so with all of that said, what do I feel about the game as a whole? So, I still think you should definitely... I feel like this game is quite long, so it's a thumbs up buy anyway, because it's going to take you that long. But I still think it's a thumbs up experience. At first I thought I was going to really dislike the game. It has a very infamous reputation. And it's always compared to some of the other entries in the series, for sure. But I don't think this is still very solid. Like, is it my favorite story? I don't know. Maybe not, but the writing is certainly still pretty alright. Like, so I definitely recommend it. Like, okay, if you were like already inclined to Chinese RPGs, or you're just playing the series anyway, you might as well get this one. It's not bad. I don't have any problems with it. I think it's good. I don't think it's as bad as the Chinese internet makes me think it was going to be. I thought it was going to be terrible, but there are some really good parts too. If you're not an RPG gamer, this might be erring on the too long. And also, I think for one problem is that with this game is that there's no English translation. So unless you're willing to wait through Chinese that's difficult for most modern speakers, then I'd probably not get this game, and I would just watch a playthrough. I guess that's me. I'm the only playthrough right now. Yeah. So hopefully someday maybe they'll release it in English, but right now there's no... Yeah, that's the only problem. The availability is still very difficult. It's mostly the language barrier. Because you can buy this game for cheap, but you can't... If you can't read it, it's going to be really hard. I think if you can read the language, if you're not really into RPGs, then maybe this might not be for you. There are the big problems I mentioned are definitely things that you should be wary of. So that is something to consider. It might be an annoyance for people who are not well versed in RPGs, or it could game break you, which would be terrible because the game breaking part is after like hours and hours of play and not early. It's very late in the game too. Or like it's like the 3/4 way or 60% margin. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, compared to entries of the series, this is not... It's not 4. It's not quite as good as 4, but in terms of like overall experience, but it's certainly definitely up there. I definitely enjoyed my time, and I feel like the game is actually a perfect length of where it should be for story-wise. Like, it doesn't wear out its welcome. Unlike Legend of Story 3 and the 3 side story, that game wore out its welcome, but not this one. In fact, I would play this over 3.5. I'm sorry. I like 3.5. Like, 3.5 is alright, but nah, this game's better. I'm sorry. I said it. 3.5 is probably one of my least favorites. Other than 2 is probably not the best one either. Oh, it's certainly not good. But this game is solid. It's definitely a worthy entry in the series. And I can't wait for prequel, which I heard is even better than this one. So we can only go up from here. So yeah, it's not the worst as I thought it was going to be. So yay. Good job for expectations that were probably set too low. And with that, I guess that's it for my review, guys. Thank you for listening to me all the way through.